So the question is, do you need to have a license to buy a boat? Do you need to have a license to sail around the world? Do some countries require a license when you go into that country? We're going to sit and have a chat today about captain's licenses. My name is James. If you don't know me, I'm a professional delivery captain, sailor. I have a master license from the U.S. Coast Guard, and we're going to chat about the different kinds of licenses you can get, the governing bodies, what the levels are, what you have to do to get them, and is it even worth getting? We're going to answer all those questions and more in this video, so stay tuned. So first of all, let's talk about the two governing bodies for captain's licenses in the world. And there are a couple more, but there are two main ones. That's the U.S. Coast Guard and the Royal Yachting Association, RYA. We're going to talk about the differences between the two. We're going to talk about who needs this license, who doesn't need the license. And then we'll answer the question, is it worth getting a license? What are the pros and cons? What are the costs? And then finally, we'll wrap it up with some alternatives to the license. We'll talk about ASA and RYA and offshore passage making. And so we got a lot to talk about. This is a big subject. So let's start with the license that I have, a U.S. Coast Guard captain's license. Okay, there's only two types of captain's licenses under the U.S. Coast Guard curtain. The first is the OUPV,
or Operator of Uninspected Passenger Vessels.
And that license is often called a six-pack because you can take 6 people. 6 people, 6-pack, makes it easy. Way easier than Operator of Uninspected Passenger Vehicles. Super easy to remember. The 6-pack is for smaller boats with up to 6 paying guests, and those boats don't need to be inspected by the Coast Guard. Now, if you're going to be working with more people, or you're going to be working, like say on a dive boat with 20 paying passengers or something like that, you're going to need the next level up, which is the master license. So the master license is for someone that needs to work on U.S. Coast Guard inspected vessels. So that's it. There's only two, master or 6-pack. It only depends on how many people you're taking. So say me, I really don't need a master license because my boat doesn't fit more than 6 paying people. But I have a master license because I have the time and rate and I have the qualifications. So why not get the highest rating I could? And speaking of qualifications, let's talk about what they are for these two licenses. So they're almost exactly the same. There's a medical exam, background check, a drug test, and then you have to prove knowledge of the rules of the road, this book. If you don't know this book, you need to buy this book. This is the rules that govern sailors around the world. These are the international and national rules for the United States. And basically, the entire captain's license is this book. It's called the Navigation Rules and Regulations Handbook. We call it Rules of the Road. So you need to demonstrate that you know the information in this thing by taking a test. It's a written test. You can go to school in lieu of taking that test, but every captain has to have something that proves that you know what you're doing. The only other thing is the one thing that makes a difference between your master's and your 6-pack license. You need 720 days of sea time in the last 5 years for your master's license and 360 days for your 6-pack. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward. Okay, and then the second governing body, as we mentioned, is the RYA, the Royal Yachting Association. They're based in Great Britain, and they also have 2 levels to their license. One is Day Skipper, and the other one is Yachtmaster. So the first big difference between the two governing bodies is the RYA have different levels to their master license. You can get coastal, offshore, and ocean. So it's pretty self-explanatory, those 3 levels. The coastal cruising is just that, within 20 miles of a safe harbor and within sight of land. And then offshore would be 150 miles out to land. And then ocean is anywhere in the ocean. So what are the requirements for all these licenses? Well, for the RYA Day Skipper, before you get into that license, you need to have 5 days at sea, 100 miles of sailing experience, and at least 4 hours of night sailing. If you're thinking to yourself, wow, I have a lot more experience than that, maybe you should go for the Yachtmaster Coastal, which the requirements are 30 days at sea, 2 days as skipper, 800 miles, and at least 12 hours at night. If you've got some offshore passages under your belt, maybe you qualify for the Yachtmaster Offshore, which would be 50 days at sea, 2,500 nautical miles, with at least 5 of those passages being over 60 miles. And all of this must include at least 2 overnight passages within the last 10 years. You also must have acted as captain for at least 2 of those passages and have 5 days as captain on a vessel under 24 meters. So for the ocean version of this license, which is the highest license that the RYA offers, it's a little different. You have to plan and execute a 600-mile journey, which at least 200 miles of that journey is over 50 miles from land. So it's basically, you need to cross an ocean. You need to have taken part in the planning, the prep, the yacht preparation, the yacht inspection, everything about that passage. You need to be the guy that made that happen. And then once you have that experience, you can come in and you can take the test for ocean. And that test is a celestial navigation test, oral and written. So you better know how to navigate by the stars as well. U.S. Coast Guard license is for commercial boats in U.S. waters. The RYA license is more internationally recognized for private and charter. The U.S. Coast Guard license is a bit easier to get, as you can take a test or have schooling in lieu of that test, and as long as you prove your sea time, you get the license. Whereas the RYA has a practical exam aboard a boat with an examiner that can fail you. And the real big difference here is the U.S. Coast Guard license expires after 5 years. The RYA license never expires for your lifetime. Though, side note, the STCW and any commercial endorsements actually do expire. So who needs a captain's license? Do you need a captain's license if you're delivering a boat? Do you need a captain's license if you're running a dive boat in the Med? Do you need a captain's license if you're chartering your own boat? Well, this is a little known fact that a lot of people won't tell you, but you actually don't need a captain's license to deliver boats. The insurance company is more interested to see that you have the experience necessary. So if you have a lot of offshore passages as captain, they're gonna like you a lot more, and they'll probably approve you even though your captain's license is expired or you never had one. But in most instances, if you're chartering, if you're running a dive boat, if you're running any kind of inspected boat, if you're getting paid as captain, you need a captain's license. When I ran a dive boat in Maui, we were stopped and checked all the time. It was almost a daily occurrence where I had to carry my license with me. I had to log my license number every time. It was a big deal because this was a Coast Guard inspected boat for 26 people. If you're doing any kind of commercial activity, it is hands down have to have a license. And if you're doing it in the US, you're going to need a US Coast Guard license. On the flip side, on my personal boat, my license had been expired for a long time. And I never really needed it. I never needed to upgrade it, never got stopped, never got asked for it. They don't ask you in countries, hey, where's your captain's license? That's not a thing in boating. So the people that don't need this is anybody that just wants to use their boat for private use. You're gonna have your family on board. It's gonna be you and your wife. There is no legal requirement anywhere in the world to have a license to use your boat privately. You don't need a license to buy a boat. You don't need a license to sail around the world. You don't need a license to be a great sailor. What you do need is experience. So let's talk about the best license to get. I've put together this little table. The U.S. Coast Guard license is best for U.S.-based captains. The RYA license is best for international and private use. The U.S. Coast Guard is recognized in the U.S. The RYA is recognized in pretty much the rest of the world. The cost for a U.S. Coast Guard license is right around $1,000, and the RYA can be $500 to $2,500 depending on the level that you're going for. Sea time needed is 360 days for your 6-pack license or 720 for your master. The RYA goes more by miles. It's about 2,500 miles for the top license. There's exams on both licenses, but the RYA license has a practical on a boat, and the U.S. Coast Guard does not. So if you want to work in the U.S. Coast Guard license. If you plan on chartering in Europe, get the RYA. If you just want the credibility of having a license and you don't really need to ever get paid,
having the RYA is always respected more than having the US Coast Guard. That's the truth. Now that said, is it worth getting a captain's license if you're in that situation where you don't need to get paid, but you want to have the clout, you want to have the respectability, you want to have the learning experience? My short answer is absolutely yes. Obviously, the learning experience that you'll have when you go through that will be beneficial to you for the rest of your sailing career. So that's a no-brainer. Now, if you think you're automatically going to be a better sailor for getting this license, then you're sadly mistaken. Sailing experience makes the sailor. Your piece of paper that you have that says you are a captain means nothing when you're out in a storm. You can also buy this book. Buy this book and read it. It'll save you $1,000. If you're not going to get paid and you're never going to use the license, this is all the information on the license. You can also buy cheat sheets. There's cheat sheets online that you can get, and you can keep those by your navigation station and study them when you have time with all the different lights and all the different sound signals. And there's a lot of rules. They're all in here. A couple alternatives to this. The RYA does have a ICC, which is an International Certificate of Competence. If you want to just go out and rent boats around the world, you can get this certificate. The United States has their own ICC. They call it an IPC, an International Proficiency Certificate, I think it is, and it's put on by ASA. And those would just be a little letter that says, hey, you know what you're doing, you can rent a boat, basically. You can also take ASA classes if you're in the States. That's a great way to learn to sail. There's the Royal Yachting Association classes, or you can get on board with one of the many people that do offshore passage making. So this is John Kretschmer, Nathan Vivian, Andy Schnell, Ryan Rayfield, me. If you'd like to get some experience offshore, get a hold of one of those guys and book an offshore trip with them. That's the best way to get experience. And you know, if that feeds your sailing bug, taking a trip with them once or twice a year, I could have just saved you hundreds of thousands of dollars. Because now you don't need the headache of owning a boat. You can just come with one of those guys and get your sailing experience and get the fun and not have to fix the boat afterwards. So after watching this, what do you think? Is it worth the money and time to get a captain's license? And which captain's license would you prefer getting? Leave me a comment below. And if you liked this video, please hit that like button. It helps the YouTube algorithm recommend my video to more people. Lastly, if you ever need any help with any boat buying questions or any captain's license questions, I offer consultations. You can get a hold of me at svzingaro@gmail.com, and I'd love to help you out. Much love. See you next week. You might be wondering why I'm sitting in front of a fireplace. This is my dad's place. He asked me not to put him on video. Hi, Dad. Yeah, this is his house. I'm up here actually renewing my captain's license. So I got a physical yesterday and I got a medical and drug test and passed them all with flying colors. And yeah, I'm gonna re-up my master license. And actually, you know, I'd really like to get the RYA license too. I'm thinking I got a delivery coming up where I'm going to be in Italy at the end of the summer. By the way, I'm going to announce that soon. It's going to be transatlantic on a brand new Blue Water 56, and I'm taking some of you guys with me. So look out for that. Anyway, I thought I'd show you around a little bit. Much love.